Good afternoon, everyone. I am Pavneet Kaur, and I welcome you all to yet another session of UPSC. And this time we have come up with a different subject, that is public administration. We'll discuss it as to how we can just look at the kind of questions that students most probably ask while they select their say optional subjects. And for that matter, we have with us very talented and a prominent faculty, Ajay Srivastava sir. So I welcome you to Edukemy. So what I feel about this subject is that uh, even before getting selected, we prepare ourselves to be better administrators because of this subject. So what do you have to say about it?
Yeah, see, it's very obvious that public administration is perhaps the most relevant of all the optionals or subjects which is to be studied for this examination, right? Because understanding and knowledge of this subject, it helps you to, have a grasp over the entire system you're going to work. And that brings in a lot of motivation, a lot of inspiration for people who want to enter the system. Through this subject itself, when you understand the processes, when you understand the entire system, its structure, its issues, the problems, the challenges, how they have been dealt, then it becomes far more easier for you to get connected to the preparation process also. And not only that, you see, any of the issue which is there, you are studying as part of general studies, any of the current affairs issue, everywhere government machinery is always involved. In order to understand the process, in order to understand the institutions or the organization which is involved, I mean, the knowledge of this subject, it helps you a lot. So dealing with current affairs and all the issues of general studies, it becomes far more easier. I mean, a lot of people understand it at a later stage, but then having an knowledge of this subject, it brings in a lot of comfort for having that understanding.
All right, sir. Thank you so much. So, what I feel is that a big chunk of students are actually from engineering background or probably from sciences, and then taking up an optional such as anthropology. Do you think that they can actually opt this subject as their optional?
You see, first and foremost, if you are a science student, then you already have a particular knack towards learning things scientifically, right? Secondly, all the social sciences, all of them, these social studies, they call themselves social sciences. They want to make them as science. Now, that is a kind of, you say, an attempt, an effort to make them more scientific. So obviously, for a science students, it is I would say, a question of great curiosity to understand the science behind all these social studies, right? So it is very relevant for them. And secondly, if you talk about public administration per se, and if on a continuum of art and science subjects, if I put public administration, I will put it somewhere in the center, in the middle. It's a very balanced subject in objective sense and in subjective sense, because you see, public administration is about theories also, it's about practice also. When you say administration, it's all about action orientation, it's all about execution, it's all about what is happening on the ground. So everything is situational, it is fact based, right? And then we imagine, okay, what could be the best way of dealing with the issues? That is where we apply our theoretical framework. So it's a very balanced subject. It is quite scientific in that ways. It is close to management sciences. And therefore, I think that any of the student of science background or even engineering subject, it would be quite, relevant for them to opt for this option.
So it is actually very great to learn that it is an amalgamation of both sciences as well as the static knowledge that we have, and then how we can apply it in our real lives. So the next question that always comes to an aspirant's mind is that whether it is going to help them in the preparation of GS papers, because they always look for a subject where they can actually cover some portion of GS in their optional also. That is why they go for some generic subjects also. So do you think that it is going to help students in their GS as well?
Now, if you talk about general studies, you can break it up into for prelims and mains separately. Okay. Now, one of the areas of GS which comes closest to public administration is Indian polity. So the entire understanding of Indian polity, its related issues, governance, and a lot many social issues and issues of social justice, of policies and different sectors, how policies, what policies are there, how they are getting implemented, all of these things, they become part of this subject, public administration. So I would say there's a great overlap Like when you talk about your preparation for prelims, not only Indian polity and certain governance related issues, certain legal related, you have seen that recently 1 or 2 questions related to law background is also asked in the prelims. So those issues, it becomes easier to be handled when you are learning public administration. And along with that, there are other policy related issues or issues related to accountability or implementation which can be dealt. This is, I'm only talking about prelims. Yeah. Right. And about mains, if you look at the entire paper 2 of general studies, I say that around 75% of it totally overlaps with public administration syllabus. If you see the details of it, right? More than that, there are issues in ethics paper, which is related to accountability and governance, which again has a good amount of overlap with public administration. So also in some of the social issues and issues related to policies and even economics also. Like for that matter, we talk about public revenue, planning, rural development, all these areas, budgeting, all these things you study in the syllabus of public administration. So not only about what is evident, what is tangible in the syllabus itself, but public administration has far greater overlap with general studies, which anyone can directly, physically not grasp just by looking at the syllabus itself.
I believe that by whatever explanation sir has given, I think all of us should take up this subject, because it is going to help you a lot in your GS. So sir, after this,
I would like to add something here when you are saying this.
Yes.
Like a lot of people, I would say that it's a question of that students should just listen, to different teachers, faculty, mentors of different subjects, and then take their own decisions. Right. The most important factor that you have to take into account is perhaps your interest and how will you sustain the study. Yes, we are there to make it more interesting for you. Definitely will make it more interesting for you, and you will be far more curious to learn everything that is there in the subject. But then decision, it's a very crucial decision for you, and please take care of your interest first of all. And second factor would be obviously how, as you were saying, how it can help in GS.
So interest is also a deciding factor, when you choose your optional subject, because if you are not actually interested in any of the subject that you take up, you're not going to learn it wholeheartedly, and therefore you'll stumble somewhere or the other. So also, I would like to know that once the class is over, let's say, so will we have any scope to interact with you after the class, or our interaction will be limited only till this classroom?
Oh, I think the testimony to this would come from all our older students, because I'm already connected with almost all of them, and for different reasons. There are people who will take a lot of time to clear this exam, and having studied this subject, I can give example of some of my students who probably they studied the subject, they wrote probably 1 or 2 attempts, and they just got interested in doing something else. And then 1 or 2 of them are doing PhD in public policy, in public administration, and all of them are keeping in touch. So forget about like till the time you're writing the exam, till your time you're going to clear the exam. We are there with you as a team all the time, in the sense that you can always approach to us with respect to whatever problems you have. And thereafter, whatever issues you have, we can deal it impersonally, personally, howsoever it will be required.
All right, sir. Thank you so much for addressing this. I think many of us fear this, whether we'd be able to have a good conversation, or any doubt if I have at all, will I be able to clear it after the class or not? Because there are a number of students who are already there. So, next, if I talk about the book list, it is also another important question that we always keep in our mind while choosing a subject. So when I first saw Lakshmikant, I just thought that how will I even complete that book, because the size of that book is,
You're talking about Indian polity.
Yes, I'm just giving you an example. So book list, and then how we are going to cover the books, and what are the number of books according to you? Because this is one such question which is a deciding factor when we just decide to go for an optional.
See, it's like a big scaring factor, because when you have to study too many books, I don't think it's about the number of books which you have to study. It's about how the books have to be used and how you have to use the books selectively. Generally, we talk about the books in terms of textbooks and reference books. We should understand the very purpose, like how you need to refer these books. I can give you a book list, but what is more important is to tell you the exact chapter or maybe certain portions which you need to study from those books. See, whatever we are covering in the class, one thing I just wanted to tell you, I don't know if you have this question from your student side, is that in the class itself, right, the way we will study everything, it will be so structured that you are going to make your complete notes in the class itself. And I don't want to see anyone wasting any extra time in making any extra notes. So that will be your final notes. From where you are going to revise, things will be complete in conceptual terms. But then, of course, if you have to, add some more value to it, do some analysis, then you need to refer books. So which we will be guiding you with respect to what all books are there. I mean, if you want, I can tell you the name of the books also, but then of course they are of two different levels, right? One is a basic level, which I generally refer in the beginning, like books like Public Administration by Sharma and Sadana or by Fadia and Fadia, only initial chapters, but these are only for initial readings, because there is no fundamental book, very basic book for public administration is not available. So you have to read some of the introductory chapters from these general books, Public Administration by Fadia and Fadia, Public Administration by Sharma and Sadana. Later on, but when you graduate and you have studied and you have understood everything, then we recommend books like New Horizon for Public Administration by Mohit Bhattacharya. We also recommend the wonderful book by on Comparative Public Administration by Ramesh Arora. Some of these books we recommend for paper 1. For paper 2, maybe there are 2 or 3 books which I generally refer, which you have to keep for reference purpose. I repeat, it is not necessary that you have to study the book wholeheartedly, entirely. Yeah, 1 or 2 books you have to become base, like New Horizon of Public Administration. You need to study that religiously. On for paper 2, any one of these books, either Arora and Goyal or Hoshiar Singh's book, one of the books you can study religiously. Rest of them you can keep for reference purpose, but everything will depend upon guidance. Let me tell you very frankly that in the class, every chapter wise, topic wise, unit wise, the guidance needs to be there as to what exactly has to be studied to deal with the kind of questions which are coming in the exams. Sorry, I have to elaborate this a lot, but I had to.
So it is very helpful for us whenever a mentor elaborates or explains the things in such a great way, sir. So another question which comes to my mind is that I believe that this subject is quite dynamic in nature. Therefore, what is the role of current affair update which is required for this optional, sir?
Definitely, it's quite dynamic subject. And if I can break it up in terms of paper 1 and paper 2, see, most of the dynamic aspects are associated with paper 2 as to how the system in India is changing. There also, there are certain topics where there are more changes happening, like for example, in the cabinet secretariat or in some of the regulatory authorities, which are more dynamic organizations where frequent changes are happening. Some changes are happening in regulations or policies which have an impact on some of these organizations. So you have to keep yourself updated with that. That happens generally, but along with your preparation for GS itself, so many things in general studies only, what you are studying is just a question of how will you use that current affairs, right? How will you relate with the issues? How will you analyze it? How will you further dig into and look into from multi-dimensional perspective of those issues? I'm talking about the current issues. So you have to study more or less the same thing. It's more about how you are going to use it. Yes, there are maybe few areas which are only related to public administration, for which we ourselves provide some of the updates. And for our older students also, we keep providing those updates. Essentially, most of these updates come from the ministry's websites or from the press information bureaus, press releases. So we have such selected items that will help students to update. And in paper 1, so I would say in paper 2, you don't have to do any, don't have to go out of the way to study anything too much extra for public administration. Your GS thing itself will help you. A little bit of extra in some cases is required. For paper 1, there are certain areas, like for example, the new paradigms which comes in public administration, the new theoretical frameworks, the new research which is going on. Either it gets updated in some of the textbooks, like New Horizon by Mohit Bhattacharya, it is well updated. So a new edition will always include new theoretical frameworks. But otherwise also, there are certain reports you have to refer, like for example, the World Bank's report, which will include some of the paradigms. So that is something which we guide students in the class, or we ourselves will integrate those things in extra study materials. And most of this also comes as part of value addition in the test series program, because everything cannot happen in the foundation course itself. So there's a lot of support, extra support, which we provide in our discussion in the test series program.
All right, sir. Thank you so much. So, the next question that I would want you to answer is that whenever there's always a wave of the toppers and what subjects they have chosen as their optional, and then many of the students are fascinated by the fact that, oh, all right, many of the students, say from anthropology or say from geography, have made it in the final list. But I feel that uh, this there is this hit rate of this public administration as an optional also. Do you think that this trend of getting good marks and getting selected using this particular optional helps students in the future also?
First of all, I just want to make a remark over here is that, see, it is not the trend that makes the topper, is the topper who sets the trends. And every year the trend is going to change. Now, today you are looking at today's topper, and according to you will decide that. But of course, it will not be the same next year or a year after that. So it will be an utter foolishness to think about, okay, if this year the topper is from this subject, then the subsequent years also the topper is going to be, or maybe the top rankers are from the same subjects. After all, it's a mix of, we don't even look at how many students have overall qualified, how many students are there in the top 50. If you get and analyze all those data, you will come across there are many such subjects which are more or less performing almost at the same level. There are like 10%, 8 to 10% success rates in terms of like how many people are writing the exam, how many people are qualifying. I'm talking about mains. So in those terms, I don't think like this could be a major factor where you should, rather you should look at the overall strategy of the toppers and see how they have prepared themselves, what special qualities are there. Try to learn from that instead of just, blindly following that what optional they have chosen. So public administration, like other subjects, anthropology or sociology, history or geography, all of these subjects are doing fairly more or less well enough, right? 8 to 10%. So I think that this trend is going to continue because these are some of the most relevant subjects to be studied, right? And somehow or the other, why the success rate is good is also because study of any of these subjects, it helps you in GS and overall preparation, it improves. That is the reason why this percentage level has been sustained over the period of time.
So, sir, does that mean that it should be purely based on the interest of a child, the selection of optional? Because if it is not interest based choice, we are any which way not going to learn it in a way we could have learned any other subject. Does it mean that?
Now, I would say that you have to take into consideration a number of factors. Interest should be the prime factor there. Then you also have to see there are certain personal factors, internal factor to you. Interest is one of it, like your own, capacities. Some people may be good in writing, some people may be good in drawing diagrams, and we need to understand what you are good at. That could also be one of the factors. In fact, that itself drives you more, right? That will be itself part and parcel of your interest. So I think there are many factors, out of which most important factor is interest. And at the same time, if you have to be also practical, then you have to see that, yes, overall, how the subject is going to help. Then there are certain subjects which over the years, they have not been performing that well. So some people might feel discouraged taking up. But if your interest and your commitment towards a particular subject so much that you can really excel and do brilliant in that subject and perform, why not to take it?
Okay. So the next question that I want to know, whether we should start preparing for this optional in May or June, or what is the best time, or is there any timeline that you would suggest to all the students as to when they can start the preparation?
I think you should start your preparation when you wake up. The day you decide that you have to take up civil services examination, mostly people do that at least 1 year before taking prelims. Your serious preparation should start. No matter how much of, basic motivational literature you have been studying from your school days or taking inputs from people, but 1 year before the exam is when you need to start. And that is a time when you should also start with your optional subject, because it is going to take time to settle down. So I would say that anywhere from May and till, let's say, August or September, before September, you have to decide your optional and you should have started your preparation. Best time is that you start it like in June or July and you finish it off by, let's say, by November, December. Your optional preparation should be completed. In the worst case scenario, People who are waking up late, or they are, realizing that, okay, now they have to start their preparation by, let's say, by the end of August or September, even then also it's fine. Even if you're starting in September, at least you'll be able to finish off the syllabus by February end, but not later than that, because at least 2 to 3 months, 3 months around you should have for your prelims. Before that, you should complete your option.
So once a student decides a particular subject for their optional, and then after that we study a lot of books, and then we keep ourselves updated with the current affairs, the next big thing is test series, sir. And many of us actually leave it in between because of fear that we are not prepared for it. But sir, do you think that for public administration it is necessary to join a test series, or should we sit at home and then just practice some of the tests? What do you suggest, sir?
See, writing tests is a must, and more so for all these subjects, and especially for public administration. See, I'll tell you very frankly that in public administration, the only challenge that had been there with respect to the, the way the question is asked in the exam. Okay, the questions are quite analytical, and you need to have a very good conceptual clarity to understand the question and answer them. And that happens only when you have been practicing a lot of question and answer. Either you structure them and then write them, and then also write it in that format, the way it is to be done in the exam. So test series is a must. It's a must. Wherever, howsoever you're doing it, even if you're not joining the test series, create an environment of test series for yourself. Do something, but it is a must that there has to be a disciplined approach towards writing such similar tests, what you are going to write in the exam. And in the test series, when you will deal with the questions, you will come across, the gaps which you have. Gaps not only in terms of your abilities, but also in terms of knowledge. And many a time when you are exposed to more difficult questions, which will happen only in the test series, right? That you get to know, okay, what are the peripheral areas? What are the extra things that we need to study or cover? And in the test series program, as I mentioned earlier also, in the discussion, it happens at the very next level. So whatever you have studied in your basic courses, in your foundation courses, or other comprehensive courses, all the discussions will become far more analytical when we are dealing with the questions. So your learning, I would say that in the class itself, whatever we have done, let's say in 60 sessions there in our overall batch, I mean, the batch will have 90 sessions, whatever we have done there in 50 classes, that much amount of, or something more than that, can happen in just 10 discussion sessions here in the test series. In terms of value creation, I'm saying, not just the bulk of the content, in terms of quality.
So, sir, I have always feared this, that even after covering, let's say, newspaper or the books which are there, I feel that something or the other I have not covered up. Do you not feel that for that we require mentorship?
You mean to say that can we not study by ourselves? No.
Sir, no.
Okay.
So what I mean to say is that despite knowing the book list that I have, I really need a guiding light in my life, because even if I know that I have to read, say, XYZ books, but then I don't know how do I read them? How do I, what is the,
See, I got your point. See, this is what I was mentioning earlier also. It's about how to use the books, right? There are two things. First is that you know to go to the right content in the books also, which chapters, which portion, which areas are important and relevant to be studied. And secondly, is the way you have to read, understand, absorb things, pick it up, make your notes, create frameworks. That happens only through some kind of demonstration. So we are doing a lot of demonstrations in the class also, with respect to newspaper, with respect to certain textbooks, with respect to our own booklets, and tell the students that this is the literature, and from this literature, how are you going to create a note or some framework or some schematic that will help you to remember things, understand things, and even reproduce it. So how to use books is very important in terms of content, in terms of approach also. And this is what will definitely happen in the class, and mentorship is very important. Maybe even if you are not part of our classes, like if you are studying books and you require some guidance from somewhere, so you need to take that.
Thank you so much, sir, for addressing this query. So, also, I would want to know that do we actually have to learn a number of facts and figures when it comes to public administration? Because there might be a number of reports that we have to quote or indices which are there in the newspaper. So, many of us fear that how are we going to absorb all the data which is present?
No, I don't think all that much amount of data is required or important because of the nature of questions are such. What is more important is analysis. What is more important is the perspectives that you are generating. What is more important is the different dimensions which you can bring in your answer. That is more important. Yes, in certain questions, for authenticity, you need to quote certain, there may be certain types of questions, but you don't have to take any extra pressure for that. From your GS, whatever you are studying for general studies only, from there itself, you can use some relevant data to be, there's nothing extra that you will have to, no mugging up of any facts and figures. It's not required. At the most, yes, you need to remember certain, if you say that in terms of facts as to, what are the contributions of particular thinker and all those things. But that I won't consider that as a fact because that's all about understanding. So you can remember facts also if you have understood something, and if you have understood in a particular way, in a particular sequence, then you always remember things. So again, there's an approach how you need to solve. Otherwise, it's not like too much laden with facts and figures as such.
Thank you, sir. So, next thing that I would like to ask you is that let's say there is a person who's average, right? Who's not very good at performing in scholastics. Do you think that such kind of an aspirant can take this particular optional?
No, anyone, whatever your level, see, it's like, how would you decide as to whether a student, I mean, someone who has not been serious in his own life, like earlier, he has not studied properly. Now, if you are here and part of the class or otherwise, you're taking on this subject, and see, there has to be enough curiosity needs to be generated that you anyhow will take interest. So even if your background, whatever your achievements have been there so far, I don't think it's a matter of concern. It's a past affair, right? You have to start on a new slate. And let's see, and we in our classes, we go from very basic conceptual building block, right? We develop that from the very basic. So any person, no matter whatever his background is, no matter whatever his achievement levels have been, how good or bad a student he had been, he will be able to understand and absorb things. This is how I feel like. And for this, I mean, sometimes it happens also, like there are very smart students also who have to bear the brunt of, getting these repeated lectures from us, right, in terms of clearing basics, because I ensure that until unless on everyone's face in the class, it is clear on their face that you've understood, I don't move ahead. So that's how I don't think there will be any problem for any such student.
Okay, so it simply means that it is only about your curiosity and whether you are able to give that zeal, that energy into this subject, you can simply go for it. So, can you just suggest some of the standard books that students have to study while preparing for this? I know the book list might be exhaustive, still some standard books that you can suggest.
See, this is the most difficult task to do as far as public administration is concerned, because there are so many things that where you need to build upon basics. This is the reason why we have kept some foundation class. I mean, in our very course itself, there will be elementary sessions, like 8-9 elementary sessions, which will help you to learn certain basic elements, and then you will start learning public administration. I can definitely suggest books to you, but it becomes far more easier if you are part of the class. So you know what, when a lot of students ask me as to what should I study beforehand, and if they are joining the course, I tell them, please don't study anything. First, you start the class itself. Let's do those basic 8 to 10 sessions, and then I will suggest you books. But yes, for the students who will be us or will not be with us, or those who have already done their preparation once, if I have to tell you the book list, I think when you are starting as a student, you can start with Public Administration by Fadia and Fadia, or Sharma and Sadana, and read some basic chapters from there. And also there is one book which you will have to cover afterwards, which is Administrative Thinkers by Prasad and Prasad. There's another book by S.R. Maheshwari on thinkers, which you can use as a supplementation. Then the best book, which is must for paper 1 in public administration, is New Horizon of Public Administration by Mohit Bhattacharya. And the second one, of course, is Comparative Public Administration by Ramesh Arora. Now, there are certain books on specialized areas also, which I'm not recommending right now. So that can be a part of the book list. And for paper 2, you can take any of those books, either Aurora and Goel you can take, or you can take Avasthi Maheshwari, or you can take Hoshiar Singh. Had I been I mean, I'm still a student though, but had I been, in my preparation mode right now, I would have just got all the, suggested books and kept in my shelf, because I'll use them for different purpose. So you should never shy away from buying books, and keep them on your shelf if you could, so that you can use them for reference purpose.
Thank you, sir, for sharing this list. And I hope that many of you might have taken a note of it. So next big challenge which comes to this preparation is answer writing. Because even if we are reading books, even if we are updated with the current affairs, we find it quite difficult to write valuable answers. So can you just throw some light on how or what is the format of writing a good answer?
See, answer writing is something which needs to be discussed in a lot of detail for you to get the idea. And for that, we obviously have our special sessions in our regular classes. But at the same time, I would suggest that the basic principle of answer writing remains the same, whether it is for GS or any other optional. It is here. One thing is there, as far as this subject is concerned, what becomes more important is your understanding of the question. So right from the very beginning, you have to tell the examiner that you have understood the question. Otherwise, it will be very clear, like the way you will write your introduction will be very clear whether you have understood the question or not. So I think we have to give a lot of importance to writing a good introduction in the answer, especially in this subject, because that has to make clear to the examiner that I have understood the question and I know the complete answer to this question, right? Apart from that, I think the structure is more or less, but we do break the body part, the structure of the answer into different components. And that depends upon the requirement of the question. Sometimes there has to be, you see, there will be an objective aspect component in it. Sometimes there will be analytical component to it. Then maybe have to add some more component depending upon the demand of the question. Now, this generally will obviously be clear when we are discussing it in detail, along with some questions and with a lot of demonstrations, which happens in the class.
Thank you, sir. So this is the last question for today's session, sir. So how are the classes at ALS and Edukemy helpful for the children? Please just highlight some of the ways through which you can say that these classes are helpful for all the aspirants.
No, I think this is something which, what I can say from my side, better if the students who have already done our classes could have given their inputs. But what I can say is that first thing is that in the class, what we emphasize is absolute conceptual clarity. I mean, everything has to be clear. And if your concepts and understanding is not there, then it will be difficult for you even to understand the question and write good answers. And this happens in this subject mostly. I have seen a lot of students, they have been struggling just because their concepts are not clear. So one thing is that you can be dead sure of this, that your concept will be very clear. Second thing is that in the class, we try to cover comprehensively as much of the syllabus. I won't say 100%, but yes, 90 to 95% of the areas we totally cover in the class. And few areas we try to give some kind of guidance, those areas which can be covered by themselves also. But we cover everything very comprehensively. As I mentioned earlier, your notes will be prepared in the class itself, so you don't have to worry for that. At the end of it, you should feel that you are totally empowered. And what we believe in that, right from the very beginning itself, it's like phases, right? How a student starts to become comfortable, how they starts being by themselves, and then finally they feel empowered. And then, I tell them that after a particular instant, I'll stop doing things for you. You have to do it by yourself, and you have to show that. Rather, by the end of the classes, all of you should be empowered enough to replace me where I'm sitting right now at the most. And I think that there are students who are like real committed students. I have seen they have been great learners, and they have experience and they have learned a lot through this approach. And of course, they have given us that feedback as well.
Thank you so much, sir, for all the inputs that you have shared with us today. So today's learning is that no matter what background you come from, whichever subjects you've studied as part of your college curriculum or school curriculum, you can take a public administration as a part of your CSE optional subject. Along with that, one thing that you have to make sure is that you are committed to your preparation. You have that commitment, you have that zeal that you will be able to cover up the syllabus and you'll do a lot of answer writing practice. Also, I would like to add here is that mentorship definitely makes a lot of difference. However, it is personal choice whether you have to prepare it on your own or you want some kind of guidance from a person who is much more experienced than any one of us sitting here. All right. Thank you so much. Thank you, sir.
Thank you so much.